الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأقرر به توحيدا وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله وصلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This brief talk bi'idhnillahi ta'ala is to shed some light on the understanding of your culture versus your beliefs. There's a lot of misconceptions regarding the culture which we embrace and regarding our Islamic values or tenets. And some individuals believe that they can make a distinction in regards to their culture, nationality, and their beliefs. However, in this fundamental importance of understanding that your culture must be within the confines of your belief, and that whenever your culture or your nationality goes against or goes outside of the confines of your beliefs, then it is detrimental to your destruction or your own peril. And that is because that's who they are. They either going to give you or they're going to give you their nationality. And this is not the correct way to respond to a question, as a person may say, Man anta, who are you? Because technically, the human that Allah Jalla wa Ala have solidified and made it clear that He have not created the jinns nor mankind except for a single purpose. And that single purpose is ibadatullah. It is to worship Allah. That's the single purpose for what you are created. That's visual. To understand that when it comes to our nationalities, they are developed via the land that you might come from. If you were born in a certain land, okay, then geographically you have developed your nationality. This is where you're from. This is your qawm. And that people have traditions and they have customs. And those customs still have to be governed by your belief, because your purpose overrides that of your land or your home or your country or your people. And this is why you see that the messengers, when they was employed by Allah Jalla wa Ala to come to their people from the land that they were from, and even though those customs existed, they didn't directly go against the customs themselves, but they mentioned the very vital and foundational thing that we must understand. They all said to their people, as Allah says in Surah Hud, and is reiterated over and over, Ya qawm, O my people, u'budullaha wa la tushriku bih. Worship Allah and do not commit shirk. They re-emphasize this to their people, the importance of the purpose, the ghaya for which they were created. So that is to alarm them and also to remind them of the covenant which they have taken with their Lord Azza wa Jal, and it also as a beacon towards their fitrah. So when an individual say that I am Ethiopian, or individuals say that I am Aborigine, individuals say that I am Caucasian, individuals say that I am an American, individuals say that I am a Pakistani, or I am an Arab, then this is secondary to the purpose for which that person was created. So if a person take pride in any of those nationalities or those cultures without making sure that it's in the confinement of their belief, then they have made a mistake. And that is because the way that we are taught to view the world is through the lens of belief, not through the lens of anything else. That's a mistake. You are taught to view the world in the deen, okay, in the lens of your belief. And that belief consists of that this world has a creator, okay? And that this universe has a creator, and that the creator mandates certain things from you, and that he created you for a purpose. And within that purpose, you must fulfill your role as his servant here on this earth to fulfill that purpose, okay? And this is why you find the likes of Sheikh Muhammad al-Wahhab, rahmatullah ta'ala alayh, where he mentions in the introduction to the four principles of shirk, he says, "I'lam arshadaka Allah li ta'atihi." He says, no, and then he proceeds to make a dua for the reader, that may Allah direct you towards his obedience. All right, and what's Allah's obedience? So he says, أن الحنيفية ملة إبراهيم, that al-Hanifiyya, okay, which is the pure deen, by the way, which is the deen which Allah Jalla wa Ala commanded Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to follow Ibrahim in, which is to turn towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to turn away from that which is worship besides Allah. That's what Hanif means. It means a person who turns towards Allah, meaning worship Him alone, and turn away or decline or incline or inhiraf away from those who worship besides Allah Azza wa Jal, whether they be an object, a human being, an angel, a jinn, etc. All right. So then he established that أن تعبد الله وحده مخلصا له الدين, that you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, making your deen sincerely for Him and His sake alone. Because this is what you're created for. This is why you are apt. You are a servant. All right. So your nationality shouldn't trump that. You being Aborigine, you being Pakistani, you being someone who is an Arab, you being someone who is from an African descent, whether it's Ethiopian, whether it's Nigerian, it shouldn't trump the fact of your purpose. You are a human being. And when someone asks you who you are a servant of Allah, which should be the correct response. Ana Abdullah. Kama qala Isa ibn Maryam. When Isa ibn Maryam was given the ability to speak as a child, what did he say? What was the first words that came from Isa ibn Maryam when he was able to, Allah Jalla gave him the ability to speak as a child? He says, Ana Abdullah. So he identified with the fact of what he is, not his nationality. It didn't matter where his mother were from or what land they were born. That wasn't the overshadowing thing. That wasn't the focus. Allah Jalla specifically mentioned in Surah Maryam, which is the 19th chapter of the Quran, that Isa said, I am a servant of Allah. That's the definition of you. That's what you start with first. Not I'm African, not I'm Aborigine, not I'm American, not I'm Caucasian, not I'm European, not that I'm from this country, from that land, this nationality. No. You identify with the fact that you are a servant because you have been created and you didn't create yourself. So you identify with the fact that you are a servant of Allah. And by saying Ana Abdullah, there are so many things entailed in that, which allows you to realize that your belief trumps your culture. Okay? Your beliefs trumps your culture. Now, Islam has conformed with culture. Whenever the culture or the customs of a people does not go outside the guidelines of Islam, then Islam embraces those culture. As we've seen in many numerous hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where he will watch, for example, he will let Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha watch the festivities of the Habashis, which are known as the Ethiopians nowadays, but the Habashis were Africans. And they used to have a certain thing that they would do in their festivities. They would play with their spears, dance, and etc., and do certain things. But the Prophet ﷺ did not prohibit her from this exhibit or from attending this exhibit or even watching it, understanding that this was a culture that was adapted by these people from their land. Because in actuality, that festivity didn't go actually in direct against what Islam actually encourages. So these are some of the guidelines or principles that the ulama have laid down when it comes to our culture. We have to make sure that the culture does not go outside the confinements of that. But some people have went overboard, that they have started promoting their culture, which may or may not even be their culture. Because most people, especially a lot of the dark natives of America, okay, they have been defined throughout history as being severed from their actual geographical location, their land, their people. So technically, to make an argument or claim that you are such and such, and you don't have a land, And that's already clear that you don't have a land. And you're not able to make a thorough, accurate study that you are literally from this particular tribe in Africa, or you are from this particular tribe in Americas. Now, you might be, if you are able, and Allah Jalla wa Ala guide you to that, then that's okay. But you still have to keep the main focus in hand. Why were you created? And then you allow that to shape how you are going to embrace your nationality or your culture. What is my purpose? And if my purpose is to worship my Lord, and if my nationality and my culture go against those things to help me fulfill my purpose, then I must do away with my nationality and my culture, and I must embrace the purpose for which I was created. So the verse that he used to prove all of this is the statement of Allah Azza wa Jalla, as we said earlier, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونِ. And I created mankind and jinn, except not to worship me. So Sheikh Yahya al-Najmi, rahmatullah ta'ala alayhi, comment on this particular part that we just read. He says, فَهَذِهِ هِيَ عِبَادَةٌ الَّتِي تُسَمَّى عِبَادَةٌ وَالَّتِي يَهُوزُ صَاحِبُهَا أَجْرٌ وَفِيرٌ وَخَيْرٌ كَثِيرٌ أَمَّا مَنْ خَلَطَ فَعَبَدَ اللَّهَ وعبد غيره فإن عباده لا تكون عبادة الله. وفي الحديث الذي يرويه النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم عن ربه قال الله تعالى أنا أكنى شركاء وأنا الشرك من عمل عملا أشرك معي فيه غيري تركته وشركه. Collected by Muslim from the hadith of Abu Hurairah. He said, this is the ibadah. The purpose for which you are created is for worship mainly. That's your sole reasons. You're not put on this earth as some people are deluded. I will place here to be a basketball player. You understand? I was placed here to be a musician. I was placed here to be a architect. My sexual development that I have, I was placed, and even though I was born with a male private part, I identify the fact that my sexuality is that I am a feminine, I am a female, and this is what I was born with. When people make claims like that, this is incorrect. First and foremost, because they are not their own creator. You cannot begin to explain the purpose of your creation without the one who created you giving you that reason. Okay? You can't explain that. That's impossible. Because if you created something, for example, people who manufacture things, or people who make things. For example, if a person was to manufacture a car or a computer or something, the computer can now not say and turn around and say, well, my purpose was for this. No, the designer, the intent of the designer or the manufacturer who placed that computer together or that car together is their intentions for what they made that thing. So the human being can now not come alone and say, well, you know what, I'm made for this. No, you're not. No, you're not. The only one who can share the one who created you in the first place. And this is why I love Islam. A fact, evident base deen, that it actually conforms with the rationality that we were given as human beings, the aql. And this is why I love Islam, because you're not going to say something that doesn't make any sense and rock along with it. Islam doesn't even allow us to follow that. As Allah says, do not follow nothing you have no knowledge of. All right. And the asl of human beings, when they were brought forth out the wombs of their mothers, they were brought out, as Allah says, يُخْرِجُونَ مِن بُطُونِ أُمَّهَاتِكُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ شَيْئًا. And we brought you forth from out of the wombs of your mothers not knowing anything. So you have to be taught. Okay. So when it comes to those certain knowledges that you don't have, you didn't even know, you were actually ignorant. So you have to be enlightened. So what is that purpose for what I created you for? Allah Azza wa Jalla tells us. All right. So the Shaykh is saying, they said that this is ibadah. All right. And whoever mixes his worship for Allah and the worship other than him, then his ibadah would not be considered that proper worship for which he was created. Well, as it comes in the hadith that has been narrated from the Prophet ﷺ on behalf of his Lord, which is known as the sacred hadith, Allah Jalla says, I am free. I have independently removed myself. Okay, I am free and I disassociate myself from the person who commits shirk. All right, when he commits association, when he joins others along with me, and whoever does an action whereby he join along with me, someone else other than me in that action, I leave his shirk, his association, right? And okay, Allah says, I leave him in his association. In other words, whatever he had done, if he done it for any sake other than mine, I don't accept that, nor do I accept the shirk. All right, so this is a beautiful hadith. He says, then the author Muhammad Wahab, he used as a means of evidence for this statement is the statement of Allah, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ لِيَعْبُدُونَ. Now pay attention to what the Shaykh is going to say here, because this all go back to my point. The Shaykh said, in this ayat, it contains that the creation of the jinns and mankind, it was for no other reason, no other purpose other than the fact to worship Allah. Allah created the humans and the jinns to establish the worship for Him. Okay? That's what Allah created you for. That's what He created you for. So you identifying with your homeland, your country, your nationality, your culture, which for many of the people who are natives here in Americas, from the dark colored people, all right, which we use the term Aborigine, we have to be honest with ourselves, completely honest, that we have a sub-mixed culture. We don't have a pure pristine culture because we have been severed from the land or the nationality of the people we come from. We don't have, there's a sub-mixed culture. Henceforth, some of us have adopted a hip-hop culture, an urban culture. Do you understand? Some of us has adopted other people cultures and customs traditionally throughout, spread without. It's not a pure precedent saying that this is my people, this is their culture, this is what I have. And you have to be really, really honest with yourself when you do that. And sometimes Shaitan plays with us because he has us thinking that this is the path that we need to go. I need to identify with my roots. Okay, if you identify with your roots, does your roots go outside the confinements of your beliefs? Because the first thing upon any person is to identify with their belief, not their roots. What's my proof? The Prophet ﷺ made it clear. Kullu mawlud, everyone who is born, they are born upon a natural fitrah. The Prophet ﷺ made that clear. Allah says, Fatarallahu nasa alayha. Allah has made the people upon a natural fitrah. So your fitrah, that internal beacon, that thing that you have within inside you, is to rarely assess and to search out for when the legislation hit it, you submit to it. So your beliefs is the first corner thing that you're worrying about versus your culture or nationality. Do you not understand? And many people don't understand this. So they go real headlong. I'm this, I'm that. And then they start to embrace that. And then they start to call to that. And then they miss out on the fact of where do I stand at in regards to what I believe? Is this what something Allah Jalla wants from me? Does this help me serve my purpose? And if they never ask the question, they never get the answer because the question is not even there. And this is why that's a dangerous path. And it's a slippery slope to go down that path. A person who headlong on pushing their nationality or their culture before their beliefs. That's a dangerous path. And there's no one who is free from embracing that except that they're going to fall into either nationalism, being national, either having the superiority complex. Yes, the Prophet ﷺ made it clear. As he says, whoever calls to asabiyya, okay, this affiliation, okay, this fanaticism, this nationalistic call, whoever calls to that, these are the tricks of Jahiliyyah. The Prophet ﷺ made that clear. He made it distinctively clear. And in that hadith, he made it clear so that he says that tell them whoever make these calls, they call it tribalistic or any of these things, tell them to bite down on the head of the penis of their father. Why? Why? Because you come from the loins of your father. Not your nationality, man. Not your nationality. And don't sugarcoat it, the Prophet ﷺ said. Don't sugarcoat it. Because the concern is not whether or not who you came from in reality, because you're not concerned with that. If you were, you wouldn't be talking geographical locations or locales or language. You'd be talking about the loins of your father. Okay, I emanated from here. Okay, that's what it is. So it's not about your geographical location. And it's a slippery slope because what you're going to find yourself doing is you're going to be pressing against those who are not in favor for your custom, your nationality, or your tradition. And then you're going to oppose those who are opposite, even if you are not outwardly calling to it. That's a big mistake many people don't understand. White supremacy versus black supremacy. Why is this a versus in the first place? It's automatically a versus because white supremacy preach their inferiority and their superiority over in regards to their race, in regards to their nationality, over that of black supremacy, right? And whether or not we agree with white or black being as a term for human beings, which really isn't a term, but whether or not we agree to it or not, it still shows us that it's going to be a conflict there. So Islam bypassed that. It didn't even focus on that. Allah didn't focus on none of that. None of that was muhim, was important. Allah didn't focus on you are from here, you are from here, you are from here. Nah, Allah didn't focus on that. What Allah Jalla wa'ala focused on was those two main ingredients, your iman and your taqwa. Do you understand? Your iman was your beliefs and your taqwa was your performance of that belief. Do you not get it? This is what Allah Jalla wa'ala says in that famous verse, Ya ayyuhan nas inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha. All right? Everyone, no matter what locale they from, they come from Adam and Eve. Everyone. No matter what locale they were made in. You understand? Whatever your nationality, you come from min dhakarin wa untha, meaning Adam and Eve. وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ, Allah says, and we have made you into shu'uban, tribes. And that developed via the location you were in, that you're developed into these tribes, which came as a part of the human development process, which you didn't even play a part in that. All right? Allah says, and we made you into nations, a people, which is supposed to show you the qudra, the ability of the creator who created you, that is marvelous that he have created this many shades of people. And they're all human, and they all come from the same parents. And so that's what's supposed to be the ayah. That's the sign. So if Allah created you from Adam and Eve, you all share the same parents. And culture. Look at your customs. They are all, you all share the same birth parents. I'm talking about your biological parent. I'm talking about the father of humanity and the mother of humanity. I hope people understand what I'm saying. So Allah is showing us that. So then he makes it clear, inna akramakum inna atqakum. Then Allah said the performance that you're looking for, this superiority versus someone being inferiority, that only can be determined in the eyesight of Allah. That degree over one another only can be based on the performance of your iman or your belief, which is taqwa. So the one who fears Allah most, again, it goes back to Allah. That's the one who Allah is going to hold in high esteem versus the one who doesn't. You understand? And it's still in the verse got nothing to do with your nationality or your culture. This is why I keep trying to stress this point. Your beliefs must govern your culture. Your beliefs must also govern your nationality. Your beliefs must take the front seat and not your culture. All right? If you find yourself pushing your culture before your belief, you have made a big mistake. We have made a big mistake, and this is why we are steeped in the ignorance and the hatred and the negativity of racism, all right, of prejudice, which all from the handiwork of Shaitan. It's all from the handiwork of Shaitan, because Allah made that clear when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-A'raf, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to Shaitan, why didn't you prostrate? Why didn't you prostrate to the one who I have created with my hands? He says, you created him from the earth, and you created me from the fire. So he has surmised, as Ibn Kathir mentioned, he was the first one to do qiyas, and no one as Ibn Kathir said, who told Shaitan, who was a jinn, that fire was better than earth? Where did he get that analogy from? How did he come up with that? Right? No one told him that. But who told him that? So he made this superiority thing here. He says, no, I'm better. You created me from fire. So why would I be bowing down to someone you created from dirt? You understand? So it's important that we understand these issues. That racism, that hatred, that prejudice only developed from ignorance. And that is a direct severance from the connection you must have with your creator, and also from the falling short and fulfilling the purpose for which you were created. You understand? This is why Allah Jalla wa'ala also says in Surah Al-Ankabut, showing us another ayat of his, that do they not see the sanctuary, meaning Mecca, where people make the pilgrimage? Do they not see the sanctuary that there are many people, countless people, from all different backgrounds, walks of life, from different nationalities, different cultures, and different, actually actualizing the verse that I quoted earlier. Ya Yuhannas. They are actually actualizing that. When you see people, if you ever blessed to make Umrah or Hajj, you're going to see the signs of Allah Jalla wa'ala in front of your face. Many people from many different shades, many different colors, with different complexes, all right, of skin color. You're going to see them working in harmony, praying to one creator, because they all realize they come from one father and one mother. And they understand it. And the concept of this one being better or not. And this does not rule out the fact that, yes, there are going to be people who have been exposed to Islam, who have had Islam in their country for years, who have been raised up in generations in Islam, from not succumbing to the evil or the ignorance of the shaitan in regards to being prejudiced towards the darker skinned people, or being, being oppressive. That doesn't rule that out. That's going to happen, and it occur in multiple countries. All right, among many people who have generational Muslims there, that happened. But you have to understand the hadith I quoted earlier. The Prophet ﷺ, as it quotes in the hadith, that the Ansars, which is from, at that time, were from Yathrib, which is known as Medina, and then you had the Muhajirin. They were those who migrated from Mecca. The homeland originally was Mecca, so it was Meccans. And then you had the Medini from the Aws and the Khazraj, that one of them had gotten a dispute with another. So immediately they fell back to the default settings. So what was the default settings? That when one disgraced the other, they said, oh, so-and-so, meaning, oh, Ansars, oh, Aws and Khazraj, you're not going to defend my honor. In other words, they called on their people, forgetting the fact that they were all made brothers through Islam. Forgetting the fact that that their purpose is to worship Allah and their servants. All of that was gone, because in that moment, at that time, they did something what the Prophet ﷺ said. He says, are you calling to Jahiliyyah? وَأَنَا بَيْنَ ظُهُرِكُمْ. While I am amongst you, meaning I am present, and you're calling to Jahiliyyah. All right, as Allah, the Prophet ﷺ made it clear, no Arab is better than a non-Arab. Okay, no white is better than a black. No black is better than a white. He made this crystal clear to deal and cure with the concept of racism and prejudice. But you go down that road when you keep sitting here, I'm fighting for my people, and I'm worrying about my culture, and we are colonized. Like, come on, how many times are we going to keep hearing this argument from so many people? You hear a lot of dark people always making this big argument, and yet they can't even organize amongst themselves. And they don't even realize that the reason why they can't organize amongst themselves to make it a successful organization is goes back to belief. Allah Jalla wa'ala tells Muhammad in Surah Al-Anfal that if you were to spin everything on the heavens and the earth, you would not be able to unite their hearts. The only one who can unite their hearts is Allah. Do you not understand? You're not going to be able to unite their hearts. Now, people might come together for a single purpose. And once that single purpose is fulfilled, then they begin to turn inwardly on one another. This happened throughout history repetitively. Over and over, repetition. You see many people who come together for a common goal. And once they fulfill that common goal, they actually does what? This is what Allah Jalla tells us about the insight of the Jews. He says that يَحْسَبُونَ أَنَّهُمْ what? يَحْسَبُونَ جَمِيعًا وَأَنَّ قُلُوبُهُم شَتَّى. You would think that they were united. They were united front. But in reality, they are diversified. Their hearts are just, Allah said, their hearts are divided. They're not in total agreement with one another, but they're going to get together for a single or common goal to fulfill that. And that's normally what happened with many people. And you see a lot of people rally. well, we need to get our rights, and we need to stand up for our rights, the indigenous people, or the Pakistanis, or the Philistines, or the Philistines, or the Egyptians, and they argue pushing a flag of their country versus their beliefs. When it's the belief that is the glue that holds them together, when it's the belief that gives them the superiority in the land. Why? Because Allah Jalla wa'ala says, wa'adallahu, pay attention now, wa'adallahu ladina amanu minkum. Allah has promised, and when Allah promises, He doesn't break. As Allah says, Allah Jalla wa'ala does not break His promises. All right, unlike human beings. So Allah Jalla wa'ala says, indeed, we have promised for those who are amongst you, that those who believe from amongst you, that if you do righteous actions, pay attention now, that the condition is that you worship me and not commit shirk. Again, your purpose, fulfilling your purpose. I will grant you, I will give you succession within the land. I will grant you authority within the land. So again, what do we say? How do we get to that ascension? How do we get to that organization? It's all going to go back to belief. And that's my whole point of this talk. Stop putting your belief to the side for following some fairy tale about how you want to organize your people under the foot of somebody else. That's not the answer. That's not the answer. Allah Jalla wa'ala did not commission the Prophet ﷺ for a power struggle. When the Prophet ﷺ came, He did not commission him for a power struggle. None of the prophets actually were sent for a power struggle. And when we talk about Dawood and Sulaiman, which were exceptional prophets because they had certain abilities they were given, and they also was kings and they ruled. You understand? And they had armies and things like that. That's a little bit different. All right. But in reality, that we must take in consideration here is that the power struggle is not in our hands, it's in the hands of Allah. And to the Muslims, stop diversifying themselves, trying to look for an identity when you already have an identity. You're Muslim. That's your identity. You're Abdullah, or you're Amantullah. You're a servant of Allah, or you're a female servant of Allah. That's your identity. And when you realize that's your identity and you place everything in its proper place, your nationality, your culture, your customs, your traditions, all of that falls under your belief. And when you do that, you're going to see a big change. The last point I want to mention, inshallah ta'ala, that I would like to mention, I want to mention some words of Shaykh Fawzan, is in this book, 4 Principles of Shirk, right, which is a fascinating book. It's a small, really like an elementary actual book, really. It's real small. It only consists of 4 pages, but it covers a lot. And one of the things that it covers is that he says, فَإِذَا عَرَفْتَ أَنَّ اللَّهَ خَلَقَكَ لِعِبَادَتِ فَاعْلَمْ أَنَّ عِبَادَةً لَا تُسَمَّ عِبَادَةً إِلَّا مَعَ التَّوْحِيدِ. Right? كَمَا أَنَّ الصَّلَاةَ لَا تُسَمَّ صَلَاةً إِلَّا مَعَ الطَّهَارَةِ. Okay? He mentions that, so when you actually understand this, when you know that Allah created you for one certain purpose, is to worship Him, then you need to know that worship is not considered worship unless it's accompanied with tawheed, meaning that you cannot worship whoever you like. You have to worship and single that worship to Allah alone. Okay, so you can't disperse that worship to anything or anyone you like. Because you feel this way, you worship this, no, you can't do that. You have to make it towards. Just like salat, the prayer itself is not considered to be prayer unless it is accompanied with what? Tahara, purification. A person can pray 1,000 rak'ats, but they pray without any wudu, the salat was never accepted. The tahara wasn't there. So the purification must be accompanied along with it. That's the same thing with ibadah. Tawheed must accompany it. Worship is not worship without tawheed. So you have to single Allah Jalla wa'ala out. I just wanted to listen to the words of Shaykh Fawzan here on this particular part of the actual introduction, so that we can understand some of the roles and the purpose of our existence. So the Shaykh, he commented on this. He says, يعني إذا عرفت من هذه الآية, if you know from this verse, the verse that we talk about, the famous verse that is each and every one of us can memorize, we should memorize. Take your time to memorize this verse. It's in Surah Dhariyat, which is Surah 51, verse 56. All right. And it's a famous verse because it shows you the purpose for which you're created. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجَنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I created not jinns or mankind except that they worship me. Right? وَأَنْتَ مِنَ الْإِنسِ. And the Sheikh said, you are from mankind. You're not from the jinns. He says, دَاكِلٌ فِي هَذِهِ الْآيَةِ. So that means you are included within this verse. You are included within this verse. He says, وَعَرَفْتَ أَنَّ اللَّهَ مَا خَلَقَكَ عَبَثًا. And you know that Allah did not create you wandering around aimlessly, which is a refutation against the Hindus, who believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the puppeteer and that he's just pulling strings and letting people do whatever they want to do. Some people have some backward ideologies out there, some concepts that are based off no divine text. And that's how you find many of the philosophers. They're working off a ground, which is mainly their aql, which is deficient in the first place, and they're not working off any divine text. So how are you going to start talking about the complexity of the world or even creation or universe, and you don't have no definite knowledge about it? This is what Allah Jalla wa'ala says, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ, from among mankind, there are those who argue, مَنْ يُجَادِلُ فِي اللَّهِ, they argue concerning Allah, right, without any book being given to them. They don't have no direct line to the Creator informing them how He created. They didn't share along with that. And these verses are extremely important to understand your role. You understand? This is extremely important to understand your role. All right. He says here, he says, he mentioned, he says, or that He did not create you just merely like animals, whereas though you just eat and you just drink. He didn't create you just for that purpose. Meaning that you live your life in this dunya at rest, and then you're moving, you're excited, right? Allah didn't create you just for this purpose. He created you only to worship Him. You have been placed here to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah placed you on this earth to see and test and examine you how you would do as a servant with a limited free will. Would you gravitate towards your fitra? Would you gravitate towards your Lord? Would you move towards your Lord if you was giving this opportunity to be alive? And Allah Jalla wa'ala, in His infinite wisdom, giving you a soul that cannot die. I'm going to repeat that again. The soul doesn't die. All right? As Allah Jalla wa'ala made it clear, you go from one stage to another. Do you understand? That's how Allah Jalla wa'ala made the soul. The soul doesn't die. The body dies, but the soul doesn't die. So in that regards, look what Allah Jalla is showing us. He says, وَإِنَّمَا سَخَّرَ لَكَ هَذِهِ مَوْجُودَاتٍ مِنْ أَجْلِ أَنْ تَسْتَعِينُ بِهِ عَلَى عِبَادَتِهِ. That all of these things which are subjected to man is only been placed here to aid you and to being able to worship Allah. So now you must use the sun, the moon, the stars, the universe, those things within the world which is subjected to you, like food, like drinking, like clothing, okay, like vehicles, transportations, like roads, all of those things supposed to aid you in worshiping Allah. They supposed to be used as a means for you to worship Allah. This is what Allah gave them to you for. It's tremendous. You're ready to stop, inshallah. He says, لأنك لا تستطيع أن تعيش إلا بهذه الأشياء. Because Allah Jalla wa'ala made it so whereas though you're not able to live in this existence without these things. Nor you're able to ascertain the worship of Allah Azza wa Jalla without these things. So Allah subjected all of those things to you only for the purpose of you worshiping Him. ليس من أجل أن تفرح بها وتصرح وتمرح وتفجر تأكل وتشرب ما اشتهيت. هذا شأن بهائم. Right? So Allah Jalla wa'ala didn't make all of these things just for you to what? Rest, enjoy yourself, delight, pleasure, you know what I'm saying? To be wicked, to be rebellious, to do all of these things. Allah didn't create you for that. That resembles what? The baha'im, the animals. And so with Freud, his concept and his influence on psychology is that he argued that in the infancy stage, that the human being, the mind, is in an unconscious state, which he terms as the id. And the id is known as the animalistic nature of the human being. All right. And he has developed it's crazy. He has developed sexuality, certain perversion things, which is can be absurd. Even amongst the Westerners, they consider it to be absurd. But he still had an influence on people where he believed that certain things, for example, brings as he proposed a crazy understanding that a person, a child, really starts off wanting the father out of the way because the first love of his life is his mother, right? And he wants to actually get rid of his father, all right? Or the cessation of pleasure in regards to using the toilet. All of these different things are concepts that they argue with without any book of enlightenment. These people argue this stuff about the development of the human mind and development of the thought process and the development of behavior, all based off of something that has no enlightenment to it. You skip those things or those components that the Creator had made you with. If you don't have that entitled with it, then how can you really argue on behalf of what the human being can do or not? Because most at the end of the day, these are theories and they're not really scientific facts. Do you understand? And that's a discussion for another talk, which is mental health. But I just want you to understand how deep this stuff really actually goes. He says, he says, as for the children of Adam, okay, which we are, all of us, Allah created them for a tremendous purpose and a tremendous wisdom, which is to worship. As Allah Jalla wa'ala says, I did not create mankind or jinn except that they worship me. Allah didn't create you so that you can provide for Allah. You can't do nothing for Allah. Again, your worship don't do nothing for Allah. You haven't added anything to Allah's dominion because you worship Him. You can't do nothing for Allah. I'm going to keep making this understand. You can't do nothing for Allah. Period. Don't ever believe that you are doing something for Allah. No. So when Allah Jalla wa'ala says, Unsurullah, Yansurukullah, aid Allah, when those terms are used, as the ulama explains in tafsir, you have to understand that you are not aiding Allah because He's incapable of aiding Himself. In reality, it encouraged the servant to realize that him doing something for the cause of Allah cause Allah to aid him. So when the person believes that it is connected to Allah, that you're aiding Allah by going in His cause, you're not aiding Him per se physically or that He's incapable, but it encourages you to do the actual act so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala via that doing for His sake, He actually aiding you. Tayyib, he says, فيفعل بنو آدم بعضهم لبعض يجعلون مالا لا يجمعون لهم مكاسب لا. He says, الله غني عن هذا والله غني عن العالمين ولهذا ما أريد منهم من رزق وما أريد أن يطعمون. So, alhamdulillah, I wanted to bring that. Our culture, and the point that I would like to make, and I'm going to close on this, is that our culture, okay, is not a thing of tremendous importance without being in the confinements of our beliefs. Your beliefs is what should guide you. How you view and perceive the world is all going to be connected to your beliefs. And if your belief is sound, then you're going to be okay. Then that means your minhaj, your methodology, and carrying out those beliefs and being dictated by those beliefs is going to be sound. But if your belief is corrupted, which the Prophet ﷺ made it clear, and it's the parents that either make them a Jew, a Christian, or a Majus, and the likes, and it's tamper with a person's fitrah, then if your belief is corrupted, then that means your methodology is also going to be corrupted. And this is extremely important. And that's why we need to understand, when someone wants to know who you are, the best thing you can say is that you are a servant of Allah. That's the best answer. Don't mention your nationality. Don't mention your name. Okay, if someone say Masmuk, what's your name? Then okay, you say what's your name. Someone say ma shakluka, what is your jinsiyah, ma jinsiyatuka, jinsiyatuka, what is your nationality? Then there specifically you can say, okay, yeah, I'm from this land, I'm from this people. But if someone say man anta, who are you? Then you say ana Abdullah. Kama qala Isa ibn Maryam, just like Isa ibn Maryam said. You say ana Abdullah, and you say it with pride. I am a servant of Allah. My purpose here is to worship Allah. And then you place everything in its proper place. You're going to now, by the permission of Allah, view your nationality in its proper context. And you're going to now view your culture in its proper context. And that anything that you do within your culture or a culture or in a tradition or a custom, you're going to weigh it against the Sharia of Allah. You're not going to start moving and playing off a guess summation. The Muslims don't move that way. You're not going to say, oh, this don't go against Islam, and you don't know if it go against Islam or not. You haven't did any bahth, no research, which was required of you to make sure it didn't go against Islam. You're not going to do that. No, you're going to make sure with absolute certainty, as Allah says, do not follow enough you have no knowledge of, that thing is in the guidelines of the Sharia. And if that culture, that tradition, or that custom doesn't go against the Sharia, and you notice with a surety, then you can embrace it. But you should allow it to be in the confinements of your belief. And this is why I'm not with the people who call to comb. All right, got nothing to do with the fact that you can't support your comb. Yes, you can support your people. This is something that is known. Okay, it's not got nothing to do with that. But I'm against people who call only to comb, and they do not call to their beliefs, or nor their association with their comb, their people, is based off their beliefs, and that's a big no for me. Okay, just because we're from the same land doesn't mean we have the same belief. And if we doesn't have the same belief, that means the outcome or the result is not going to be the same. And that means what I'm fighting for is not the same thing that you're fighting for. And if I'm fighting with you only based on the fact that your nationality is my nationality or your skin color is my skin color, that's not going to be enough. I got to know that your belief is my belief, because Allah Jalla wa'ala said that there are two types of soldiers. There are those who are fighting in the army of Allah, and there are those who are fighting in the army of the Shaitan, period. All right? Whatever we said that was incorrect in this talk, inshallah ta'ala, that was from ourselves. In our translation was from ourselves and Shaitan. What was this correct from Allah Jalla wa'ala? Subhanakallah wa bihamdi. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Jazakallahu khairan for everybody tuning in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.